Welcome to my library. Um, I've been falling a little bit behind on my book reviews. This is the books that I've been reading over the past 6 months or so. So we're just gonna review them on video and try to get as far as we can and try to do them quick. So let's get started. We're going backwards. This is the one I just read. It's called Evolution of a Revolutionary. Afeni Shakur, Evolution of a Revolutionary by Jasmine Guy. Jasmine Guy is an actress, and she was friends with Tupac. So that's how she became friends with Afeni. Those of you probably know that Afeni was one of the Panther 21 during the period of repression against the Black Panther Party and the movement for Black liberation. So Jasmine writes this book is kind of a conversation with Afeni about her life, her lessons about Tupac, about addiction, about just a lot of the struggles that their family went through. Really good book. I think y'all should read it. Before that, I read this book. It's called Letters from Attica by Sam Melville. He was part of a group of white people that conducted a series of bombings, mostly in New York. And this is the letters that he wrote from Attica and other holding facilities, detention facilities in New York, when he was, waiting for his trial. And he was at Attica when the uprising happened in '71, I think it was. The book says that he's one of the leaders, and other people don't place him at that high of a level. But kind of a unique exploration of the prison literature genre. Letters from prison remind me of a lot of other prison letters books. Before that, I read this book called Party Music. It's by Ricky Vincent. He's a scholar, and his mother, I think, was involved with the party back in Oakland. So this is basically about the Lumpen. That's the Panthers' soul music band. But it kind of takes the Lumpen as a point of departure and explores every intersection between Black Power and soul music. A lot of it is repetitive if you've read the Panthers' history, but some of the cultural explorations are new. I learned a lot. It's a good book. Read it. Before that, I read this book, Madiba A to Z, The Many Faces of Nelson Mandela by Danny Schechter. This one was weird. It was kind of very removed from Nelson Mandela's life and his story. It was like interviews with people that read a lot of books about him and stuff like that. It was basically a big commercial for Longest Walk to Freedom, the film that they made. I wouldn't recommend this. Don't need to waste your time on this one. This is a kid's book called Sealth. This is one that we're reading in preparation of our trip to up north. Very old. It's got some good pictures. Appropriate for kids, I think, but very old. You could tell when people were writing about Native people that come from a different generation before we're as sensitive to issues as we are today. This one is called Growing Up Underground. Horrible title, by Jane Alpert. She was part of the Sam Melville group. Actually, she used to date him. They were a pretty serious item. It's like another inside look at the white movement in the '70s. They really wanted to be in solidarity with the third world movements and the movements led by people of color, but they were really just lost. I find that in a lot of these books about the weather people, and I don't know. She tries to get out of terrorism and get into feminism, and it just all seems really fucking fake. I wouldn't waste your time on this one either. We the People, My People Are Rising. This is by Aaron Dixon. He was the captain of the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party. This is also one we're reading, preparation for our trip to go up north. We thought we were going to be learning a lot about Seattle, but he's in Oakland half the time, of course, because he calls everybody to Oakland, and that's going to be the base of the revolution. So Brother Aaron was there for a long time. But still, I really, it's one of these first-person narratives, really deep into the struggle. Learn a lot about, the community in Seattle. They had a Marcus Garvey bookstore. They had some really interesting local struggles in Seattle. Yeah, good book. Before that, I read this one. Is called Rebels of the Woods, the IWW of the Pacific Northwest. This is also in preparation for our trip up north. It's a very honest look at the Wobblies and their movement, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Gets way back into the history, the origin of the IWW, and gets into some of those really, really bloody battles, especially in Centralia. And we're going to cut it right there because we're taking too long. Okay, picking back up on our very rapid book reviews. I just got done talking about Rebels of the Woods. Pretty good book, especially if you're interested in the history of the IWW or the history of the Pacific Northwest. Gets into logging a lot. Okay, moving on. Before that, I read this book, Malcolm X, on Afro-American history. This one my mom gave to me for May Day this year. So thanks, Ma. This is basically a transcription of a lecture that he gave in Harlem, I think it was. And basically, kind of putting he's sharing a lot of the things that he had learned about Black history with his audience, stuff that we now kind of take for granted because, Brother Malcolm was part of uncovering a lot of this stuff that is now, common knowledge. But it gives you a sense of where people's heads were at, especially back in those days, at the time that he gave this speech. You like Malcolm? Read this book. Before that, I read this book called Still Black, Still Strong, Survivors of the War Against Black Revolutionaries. And it has got essays by Dhoruba bin Wahab, who was also part of the New York 21, Mumia Jamal, who was, everyone knows Mumia, Assata Shakur. Yeah, I wasn't really too familiar with Dhoruba before or his work, but I really got a sense of him, a much deeper sense and appreciation of him from this book. I think it's one of the few books where you can actually find Dhoruba's writings in print, in publication. And then the interesting thing about this one, everybody thinks about Mumia, the voice of the voiceless, being part of the Panthers. But in this book, he really talks about his affinity for the MOVE organization in Philadelphia and his loyalty to John Africa. That's another history episode that's kind of buried in history, that everybody kind of heard about the MOVE bombing but don't really know who MOVE was, what they were about. He doesn't really get into that too much, but it's kind of shifts. For me, it kind of shifted my view of Mumia. Really good book. You should read this one too. Before that, I read this book called They Walked Before, The Indians of Washington State by Cecilia Carpenter, who's Nisqually. And it's actually signed by the author. Dated July 19th, my birthday. This is also in preparation for our trip up north. Very short, but it does give a general overview of who the tribes of the Northwest are, especially closer to the coast, and kind of some of the things that their cultures have in common and where they lived, that sort of thing, their language groups. And it's written from an inside perspective. She's mixed, but she's Nisqually, so she's sharing, about her own people. Before that, I read this book called 1066, The Year of the Conquest. It's by a guy named David Howarth. This is one of these popular history genres. My partner had been teaching this class on medieval history, and so I was looking for some resources. Brett got a bunch of books. Told her that she should be teaching about the peasant uprisings and about repression of the old religions, witchcraft, that sort of thing. And this was one of the books, and it looked really short, so I read it. And I feel like I have a much better appreciation of the